Good morning, everyone, and thanks very much for attending our Soil Community Aggregating Knowledge and Capacity Forum, which is the first of these forums, and we plan to hold these fairly regularly into the future. And what we're trying to really do is to get people involved from all the various aspects of the soil community, whether they're landholders, service providers, research, extension, NRM, etc., so we can exchange information and advance our soil health across the country. My name's Cameron Leckie. I'm the Regional Soil Coordinator working out of the Southern Queensland, Northern New South Wales Innovation Hub. These are new positions that were funded out of the National Landcare program and been recruited in the last couple of months. I started in April, and around the country there's 8 of us. A number of other soil coordinators have been recently recruited. So we'll get into it. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the First Nations owns the lands upon which we are meeting. I'm physically in Toowoomba today, where we have the Guyabul and Jarawar people. I pay my respects to elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture and wisdoms that have been passed down for hundreds of generations. And of course, within that is that ethic of care for the land. So may we use this space to unite peoples in all walks of life and learn from one another on our journey towards growth, healing and reconciliation. Just a little bit about the hub. So it used to be called the Drought Hub. It's now the Innovation Hub because the remit of the hubs has been expanded. So Southern Queensland, Northern New South Wales, you can see the map of the area we cover there. So from Longreach, southwest Queensland, across the Burnett and southwards towards the Queensland-New South Wales border. And then New South Wales from Dubbo and Western Queensland, right across the mid-north coast of New South Wales and up to the New South Wales-Queensland border. The hub itself is based in Toowoomba. It's got nodes in Longreach, Roma, Stanthorpe, Lismore, Armidale and Narrabri. And its activities are focused around preparing for the next drought, which will no doubt be not too far from coming. And it also it's being used to facilitate agricultural innovation in this region. So if you want to find out more about the hub, Kate will put a link into the chat box and you can find more information on the website there. But why are we here? Most of you would have seen that the State of the Environment Report for 2021 was released in the last month or thereabouts, and its assessment of soil health was not good. You can see there, that's a snapshot from the report, that our condition of our soils are on the whole poor and heading in the wrong direction, so they're degrading. Obviously, that's for everyone who's here, I imagine believes that's to be a very important issue we need to resolve. We need to first of all change the direction and then also the condition. So we want our soils to be improving and we want to aim for good and very good soil health. So that's one reason why we're here. The second reason is that it's quite a complicated space we work in. One of the first things I did when I took up this job was a bit of a mind map of all the organisations, the funding bodies, the extension groups, producers, locations, the various projects and programs that are going on. This is a snapshot of that. And you can see that it's quite a complicated field that we're living in. Just ask if you haven't got your
have you seen Breaking Bad before?
Your camera on or your muted. Can you please mute so there's no feedback? Sorry. So you can see it's quite a complicated space that we're working in, and I would challenge anyone here today to be able to claim that they're fully across all the activities that are going on soil related across Southern Queensland.
I agree with that statement.
So the aim of today is to help facilitate knowledge transfer, so meet new people, see what projects are going on, and aim for opportunities for collaboration and learning, which will help us improve the condition of our soils across this country. So today we're going to focus on the Smart Farm Small Grants Soil Extension Activities Program. That's, as I mentioned, funded by the National Landcare program. Approximately $14 million worth of funding has been allocated, and the program started earlier this year and will wrap up next year. 32 projects were approved Australia-wide out of 272 applications. So what that is an indicator that A, there's a lot of interest in improving soil health through soil extension activities. but with only a bit over 10% of the applications being approved, there's also a lot of unmet demand. So hopefully out of the projects that are occurring in Southern Queensland, Northern New South Wales, we'll be able to take the learnings and the experience gained from that and spread that wider. And within Southern Queensland, Northern New South Wales itself, there's 7 projects awarded worth a total value of $3.6 million. And today we're going to have the project managers for each of those projects presenting. So sequence of events, we'll go through each of the project managers from their respective organisations will present. There'll be a short opportunity for questions at the end of each presentation. So I'd ask that you place any questions that you have in the chat box. And then at the end of each presentation, Kate will present those questions to the presenter. Now, we do have, unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, there's 3 of our presenters who won't be physically presenting or physically here, but have provided a presentation. So if there's any questions for those people, ask that you just put them in the chat box all the same, and then we will forward those on and get a response back to you. What I omitted to mention earlier is we're also going to have a couple of polls. I've missed the first one, but I'll get Kate to put that up. Rather than doing a survey or anything like that, we've just got 4 short poll questions, which will be placed on your screen. You won't be able to avoid them, but if you just click on it and submit your answer, and then Kate will share the responses. So the first question is about what is the most important soil health issue facing Australia. So we'll just take a moment to answer that, and then once we've got most people responded, we'll share the results. So the first presenter today is Jane Gentry. She's from the department or DAF in Queensland. I just need to close this because I can't see what I'm reading. And Jane will be presenting on her project, which is improving the knowledge and ongoing capacity to rebuild soil health.
Okay, thank you, Cameron. Thank you, everyone. First cab off the rank to share with you the Smart Farms project that the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries was awarded. We called it, we always got to come up with a pretty cool name, Improving Knowledge and Ongoing Capacity to Rebuild Soil Health. So the focus of this one is really on, it's interesting, some of those are the little quiz that you put up there is some of the things that we're really focusing in on this one in particular. So it's about halting nutrient, soil organic matter and carbon decline. And our footprint is central Queensland into southern Queensland, just focused on the grain region. So as far west as Roma and the Maranoa, right up into just north the Central Highlands, and then down around Gundawindi and the Darling Downs as well. So that's our project. So we have 3 activities. For those of you who remember the horrific time of putting the tenders in, we actually put in for 3 different activities. So the first activity for our program is the soil testing component. So of course, a very major component of this program. So our plan is to soil test 90 properties across that central Queensland, southern Queensland. That we were going to aim to do this in 6 months, but the wet weather is causing us major delays, but that's okay, I'll get to that later. But within those 90 properties, we're actually soil sampling 3 sites or paddocks, depending on what the grower really wants to have a look at. And so that is driven by what the grower themselves are keen to investigate. But we're looking at trying to get some, understand some differences within their cropping system. So it might be 3 paddocks that have been managed differently with a different history, or like you can see some photos down the bottom here, we've actually done some remnant vegetation versus some long-term cultivation, just to get an understanding of that soil organic matter and carbon and where those sorts of levels have gone to over the last, this paddock was 40 plus years cultivated. So we're doing 6 cores per each of those 3 sites, and that we're bulking those into 5 layers down the profile. And the analyses that we're doing are all physical, chemical and biological. We're doing a whole range of different analyses for those different layers. So the second activity, so that's what we've been focusing on in the first part of the project, is doing our soil tests. And then the second part will come into play as those analyses come in, is then we'll be running workshops in the communication phase. So We'll be doing at least 6 workshops across that region. We will be taking the workshops to the growers where they are geographically located and sitting them down with those soil test results. So they'll actually get those analyses as a result of the soil tests and take them down and talk about, well, what does it mean? And you can see there particular areas we'll be focusing on is the role of soil organic matter and carbon, nutrient requirements to maximise their crop production, and also the reality of a lot of these areas in Queensland is they do have physical soil constraints. So we'll be the analyses that we're doing will be able to help them understand is if they have soil constraints, where they come into play in the profile and what that actually means. The main reason why we're doing, I guess, the focus for that is we want to increase the farmer knowledge and skills or soil testing capacity to interpret those results. So we find a lot of growers normally default to their agronomists. Sometimes agronomists don't necessarily know exactly what they're doing. So, so actually going right to the grassroots and working with the growers themselves to help them understand and interpret those soil test results. But for us, the most important bit then is to help them identify areas to improve and to develop strategies and action plans to build their own soil health and productively and profitably. So that's moving them right through into developing an action plan of what they can do. Other communications that we'll be doing, webinars, podcasts, using social media. But one of the biggest things I think our project will contribute is our workshop materials. Is we have three very experienced extension officers as part of this project that have actually 4 of us now that I add them all up, that have done this work in the past. So we'll be able to build some really good quality workshop materials that hopefully can then be shared as a legacy material into the future. We also have a third activity. So the third activity is taking those action plans that we develop with the growers in those workshops and actually rolling them out into the paddock. So not just talking about what they can do, but actually helping growers implement some of those changes and test something in the paddock. So what we had on our proposal is at least 50% of the participants will actually do something different, actually test something in their paddock within the time frame of this project. Obviously, the tight time frame makes this extraordinarily challenging, but the way that we're going to set those trials up is to allow long-term assessment of those trials using things like satellite imagery over the long term. And we'll be working with those growers to ensure those trials are as scientifically rigorous as they can be. And like I said, the ability to self-monitor the progress for themselves into the future. And then ultimately more soil sampling. That's what we do in this project, is lots and lots and lots of soil sampling. And we'll do have field days as well at these sites when they're actually implemented. So where are we up to, I guess? As I said, the rain has been an incredible challenge to us to actually get into the paddocks. We've, and not talking ourselves up, but what the Queensland DAF do is soil sample, and we are absolute guns at soil sampling. So if we can get onto the paddock, we can get the cores out of the ground. So, but it's getting onto the paddocks. Anyone who knows, we've had huge amounts of rain, and it just keeps raining. So we have managed to soil sample about 75 of our properties. We've only got 15 left, which is just incredible, which represents about 210 sites have been sampled intensively, which is over 1,500 analyses that that are coming in now. And workshops will be planned for as soon as we can get those analyses in, make sense of them. So we're hoping September is the time frame for those.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Jane. Kate, we got any questions?
Yeah, we got a couple. So Christina asked, what will be measured to assess the soil biological health?
So the types of measurements that we're taking is we're really focusing in on understanding the carbon and the fractions of carbon. So we're going to do some pretty cool, which aren't commercially available, some MIR analyses to look at the different fractions of carbon to understand how that relates to soil organic matter. And then the other tests that we're doing is the SARDI predictor-B test. So that not only looks at the pathogens in the soil, but also helps people understand their AMF levels and the different species of AMF in their soil.
Another question is, where will all the data go?
That's a really good question. Where will all the data go? We have sought permission, sorry, just trying to think of the right word, permission from all our growers to share the data into the National Soils Database. So that's our ultimate goal, is to do that. I have been speaking to DOR about how that will look, and I think, as far as I know, and I don't know, I'm hoping someone else might know something different, that's still all being developed, but that's our ultimate goal. But we have sought permission from each of our growers to be able to do that.
Wonderful. And one last question, positive comments. Fantastic, Jane. Really looking forward to this as it rolls out. The question, do you have any interaction with OFT? Sorry, I'm not quite sure what OFT means.
OFT, I don't know what OFT
Abigail,
means.
can you clarify what OFT means, please?
Yeah, I can. It's the on-farm trials network that is predominantly, I guess, run with GRDC. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Abigail, this isn't a GRDC funded project. We do lots of other GRDC funded work. So no, we haven't. And we don't actually put our trials into the on-farm trial network that GRDC run.
Okay, thanks.
That's okay.
There's another question. What depths are the samplings?
Yes, okay, so we're doing 0 to 10 centimetres. So in our grain cropping country, we're sticking with our standard depths. So we're going to do 0 to 10, 10 to 30, and they will be much more comprehensive samples. But then below 30, I'm including the MIR and the predictors. But then from 30 centimetres onwards, we're doing 30 centimetres to 60 centimetres, 60 to 90, and then 90 to 120. But the 90 to 120 is given some of our soils a challenge, but that's our goal. So we go to 120 where we possibly can. And they are still comprehensive analyses, just a few less, I guess, some of the intensive analyses down the profile we haven't done.
Wonderful. And one last comment. Pathogens are a very insignificant percentage of the community and potentially, again, demonising the biological workforce. Hope that testing also shall look at the food web to give a better appreciation of them. Soils are lacking biological functionality and diversity. A comment from a user. And then another question, how are you maximising the scientific rigour? Do you know if your triplicate sites on a farm are actually all the same soil type?
So we've actually purposely gone to different, I guess, soil types in a paddock, or like I said, different paddock histories. So that is, we've purposely identified that we're hoping that they are 3 different comparisons. We're not looking for them to be the same. Like anyone, soil is hugely variable, so it is really hard when you're in there soil sampling to make sure you are sampling as rigorously as you can. But as I said, we've had a bit of experience in it, and we've had experienced people out there taking the soil cores. So working with the grower and our own experience on the paddocks, we have been trying to ensure that we are taking cores from representative areas to represent that paddock. And then, yeah, well, the scientific rigour for us also works into the on-farm research, and that's where we will be working with the growers to try and replicate strips in the paddock and to help them, develop a protocol that will actually be able to accurately measure the differences, if there are any, into the future.
No worries. Thanks very much, Jane. Looks like a great project and a great presentation. I just got one quick question. So you've got 90 properties you're going to. Do you have much difficulty in recruiting, producers to get involved in the project?
Yeah, Cameron, that has been a real, it's an interesting question. And I'd say We haven't had a lot of problems recruiting people, but it has been a process. I guess we have had to be committed to it. We've used lots of different ways to gain access to those growers. But generally for for this one in particular, people are interested in soil health and they're interested in improving and understanding carbon. So we haven't really, we've managed to get to our 90. If we had to get to 180, I think we would have been really struggling. Yeah.
No worries. All right. Thanks very much once again, Jane. Great presentation.
That's okay.
Righto. So our next presenter is Ewan Leighton, who comes from North Coast Local Land Services in New South Wales, and he's going to be presenting on the Healthy Northern New South Wales Coastal Soils for Healthy Farms, Landscapes and Living projects. So Ewan, can you share your screen, please?
All right, good morning, everyone. My name's Ewan Leighton. I've got the fancy title of Senior Agricultural Advisor. Getting a little bit of feedback if we can get on mute, please. But basically, I am an agronomist by trade. I'm with North Coast Local Land Services. I'm actually standing in for Lilia Camphorst, who's on leave at the moment. So she's managing the project, but I'll do my very best to do it justice. So a little bit of background just with regards to North Coast Local Land Services and some of the previous soil work that really, I guess, pushed us to tender for this and put this project forward. We did quite a bit of work through the pandemic and beforehand with blueberry and macadamia growers working with erosion control and farm layout, etc. So we did a bit of work with David Hardwick and Soil Food Web and put together some webinars and fact sheets. And there was a really high demand from our region to continue these soil health and improvement projects. So we really wanted to build on that theme of improving soil health and gaining an understanding around soil chemistry and general farming sustainability on the North Coast. Our project actually runs from Bega on the south coast right up to the Tweed across 4 local land services areas. Today, I'll just really talk about the North Coast, which runs from the Hastings at Port Macquarie up to the Tweed Heads and along the base of basically the escarpment. So the project objectives, we've got really 2 main objectives. We're targeting 690 landholders all up, and the aim is to increase adoption of best practice sustainable agriculture and also increase the capacity of land managers to adopt these practices. So what does that mean? Well, we want to increase understanding and recognition of limitations of landscapes and soils on the North Coast. We do have huge variation across small areas on the North Coast with the hills and the valleys and the floodplains. So it is a highly variable area. And we really want to promote appropriate management practices and minimise adverse environmental outcomes through understanding of soil health. And this includes collection and recording of soil samples and really trying to increase landholder capacity and understanding of structure, texture, and the ability to interpret soil test results, I think, is really important as well. So what does this mean in layman's terms? Well, we want to encourage farmers to take as many soil tests as possible on the North Coast. We want to contribute as many as we can to the National Soils Database. So that follows on from what Jane mentioned previously. And then we also want to help farmers interpret soil test results and use these results as well to implement improvements to their farming systems to improve soil health. So how are we going to achieve this? Well, we've got this is for the North Coast. We have 8 workshops organised. We've done one of those 8 workshops in May this year. We did have some organised previously, but like the rest of the world, we were impacted by COVID, and then obviously we had a few floods on the North Coast that you may or may not have heard of. One-on-one farm visits. So as part of my role in an advisory capacity, I respond to customer inquiries and try to engage with landholders and sort of put together strategies and plans to improve their soil health and pasture condition, etc. So we do a lot of that work on a day-to-day basis. Webinars, fact sheets, we put together a practical soil health manual, which we hand out during our field walks, and it contains quite a few fairly simple ways that landholders can gauge the health of their soil and sort of where they need to take that. And then also we collaborate quite a bit with DPI, Landcare, various universities, and we try to link landholders in with some of the expertise and other programs that are currently underway on the North Coast. And then all up, we're aiming for 1,380 soil test submissions. That's the magic number. We've currently sent out 260. That was last week. We've had another little wave of inquiries come through in the last week or so. So be up to 280 odd soil sample kits that have been sent out across the North Coast this year. And about half of those have been taken and submitted. So landholders have taken the samples and submitted them to the lab, and they're being uploaded as we speak. So we still need to follow up on another 140, and we'll continue that program for the foreseeable future. We are making a bit of a rod for our own back with regards to following up with all of this, but anyway, we'll get there. And then some of the upcoming events for this year, I mentioned in May, we've had a field walk at Mapuraba behind Kempsey. We do have another field walk with soil test interpretations at Taylor's Arm behind Maxville, and then we've got a series of I guess field days, workshops, we'll call them, with soil pits, with the Soil Knowledge Network in late September. So that's all, around Byron, Tweed, and down to Grafton as well. And then we'll also do some stuff around Port Macquarie and Coffs Harbour towards the back end of this year. And that'll round out some of our extension activities for this year. And then we've got some more events in the pipeline for 2023. And the response to these events in the later part of this year has been really strong. So we're pretty much fully subscribed for most of these events. So the thirst from landholders is really there to engage and improve their systems. That's about it. I will take questions if you've got any.
Thanks a lot, Ewan. That looks like a great project. I don't think we've got any in the chat yet, unless you can see, Kate.
One just came through, only surface samples.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so 0 to 10 centimetres, yeah. And we're doing basically a transect across a paddock, and then we're trying to encourage landholders to geolocate, so take a reference point to geolocate that paddock.
And what's included in the test kit that you're sending out?
Yeah, so it's 2 free soil samples, and it's a fairly basic analysis. It's pH, exchangeable cations, there's total nitrogen, Colwell P. That's, I think, about it. There's probably another couple of characteristics in there, but they are encouraged, if they want to add additional tests to that. So they that's at their own cost, but it just makes it easier. So if they want to add a few extra bits and pieces onto that, they can. And that analysis is done at the soils lab at Wollongbar DPI.
So questions about, is the data going into the New South Wales Government Soil Database, and is there a category for this in the national database?
Yeah, it'll go into both. I'm not sure about the category in the National Soils Database. I'd have to follow that up, but it will go into both, yes.
Okay. And do you provide training to farmers on what it means for them with the results?
Yeah, so we're actively doing soil interpretations with growers during our field days and workshops. And then also when we respond to an inquiry for a soil test, my number and a few of the other advisors within the North Coast local land services are, our details are passed out. So if they do need assistance with interpreting a soil result, or potentially coming up with a bit of a program in response to a soil test result, they can contact me, and we'll go through that with them.
Perfect. And what is the rooting depth of blueberries?
Oh, righty, throwing a curly one there. blueberries are a fairly shallow root, surface rooting plant. They have got a fairly fibrous root system. So I don't know how deep they will go, but majority of their roots are in the surface. I guess probably the top 20 or 30 centimetres.
Wonderful. And are there any events between Lismore and Coffs?
We are working on something in Grafton. I guess the big problem we're having is we've had a lot of rain, like the rest of the eastern seaboard. We've had some serious floods around Grafton and Lismore. So the ground is still very wet in a lot of areas. So getting onto country is still very difficult. So yeah, we are trying to organise some stuff around Coffs Harbour and Grafton, but I will leave that where it is for now.
And one last question, how many people do you expect at an SKN event?
It really depends on who we've got speaking. You know, if I'm the main speaker, we might get 2, but if Nathan Jennings is speaking, we might get 200. So no, look, we're expecting 40 to 50. You know, obviously we do have a budget, so that is probably our main constraint. Around Ewingsdale, around Byron Bay, we've had a really strong response. We're hosting that at the farm at Ewingsdale there, which is a bit of an attraction for a lot of people. So, you know, if we open it up, we'd probably get 100 people. But at the moment, we're looking at potentially 40 per workshop.
All right, some good questions. Thanks very much, Ewan. Looks like a great project. I've just got one question. Is the interest like across all industries, or you've signed it sort of focused in, you know, one or groupings of industries as opposed to everyone?
No, it's a good question. Look, the majority of our inquiries come from the pasture space. I'd say probably 50 or 60%. But we do have pretty good engagement around Byron with the market gardeners, and they seem pretty keen to improve their understanding of soil health as well. And then obviously the macadamia and the blueberry growers are a fairly established industries on the North Coast. So we do engage with them a fair bit as well.
All right, great. Thanks very much, Ewan.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next presentation is from Katie Muller, who works for the Burnett Catchment Care Association Incorporated in Queensland. Their project's called Invest in a Test. Unfortunately, Katie can't be here today, so we're going to play a pre-recorded presentation. So over to you, Kate.
The classic, let me know if you can see and hear it. I think this should work.
Hi, I'm Katie Muller and I'll be presenting on Burnett Catchment Care Association's project Invest in a Test. Invest in a Test is a 2-year project funded by the Australian Government's Smart Farms Small Grants program. Our project is aimed at increasing confidence and capacity of producers in the inland Burnett and beyond to invest in soil testing and use the results for informed, profitable and sustainable management decisions. Burnett Catchment Care Association is a not-for-profit community natural resource management group who have been operating in the Burnett for 27 years. To put it briefly, BCCA's focus is on supporting sustainable land management in the Burnett. We employ professional staff with education in agricultural science, environmental management, ecology and business management. We pride ourselves on employing our staff who live and want to work in rural towns, therefore building small communities' capacity. Over the past 20 years or so, we have assisted a couple of thousand landholders improving their land management practices and have assisted in the improvement of 123,000 hectares of soils across the Burnett. The Burnett catchment from an agricultural perspective consists of beef cattle grazing, particularly in the inland, coastal sugarcane and horticulture, and smaller areas of dryland and irrigated grain, pulse and hay cropping in the inland areas along the major creek and river systems. The last 12 years has seen a significant level of funding for extension and support for agricultural producers on the coast to help improve management practices to reduce sediment, nutrient and pesticide export to the reef. The inland areas, mainly the grazing and cropping industries, have had much less funding and support. The likes of Growcom and Bundy Fruit and Veggie Growers, or cane growers and SRA, support the horticulture and cane industries very well. And unfortunately, the same level of support is not available for graziers and the cropping industry in the inland Burnett. There are a very limited number of independent agricultural consultants in the inland region, with producers relying mainly on sales-based agronomists. Because of this, we have focused on the inland Burnett for this project. This project will involve conducting soil testing at 60 sites across 5 localities in the inland Burnett. Sites selected are representative of soil types and typical production systems. Soils data will include results of laboratory analysis and basic soil morphology. For 2 or 3 cropping sites, additional EM survey technology will be demonstrated to determine the variability of the sites and inform more targeted soil testing locations. This is an opportunity to showcase newer technology not routinely used in the region. 5 extension events will be conducted where landholders can discuss their soils data and what it means in their production system, including management options. The events will encourage peer-to-peer discussion and learning, supported by a soils expert. Additional participants from the extension events will be offered one-on-one extension support to assist them to plan and conduct soil testing to better inform management decisions. Relevant resources, such as case studies and technical information on soil sampling and interpretation and possible management options to support improved soil health, with particular reference to the inland Burnett conditions, will be posted to the Burnett Ag Hub. The Burnett Ag Hub is an online resource hub created and administered by BCCA. We asked for people to register their interest in being one of the 30 producers to receive free soil testing and one-on-one support by an experienced independent agronomist to interpret and offer recommendations based on the soil analysis. We have been oversubscribed with interest from across the North and South Burnett. The producers we have engaged are from a range of production systems and who would like to conduct soil testing for a variety of reasons. These include graziers on both native and improved pastures, loose and hay producers, fodder crop and lachina growers, as well as dryland and irrigated grain and pulse growers. There has been a wide array of situations growers feel they require soil testing. Some examples are paddocks have been flooded multiple times this year. Long-term cultivation paddocks that are being converted back to pastures. We've got multi-species planting with some plants showing a lack of vigour. Poorly established, recently planted improved pastures, and they're wanting to know why. Drought impacts and erosion problems. Then we have an organic property that wishes to maintain good production without synthetic inputs. Others that want to identify potential deficiencies before planting improved pastures. We've got a recently purchased severely overgrazed property. So lots of interesting situations to test. The first round of soil tests have been conducted in the South Burnett by David Hall. David is an independent agricultural consultant specialising in soil fertility, soil biology and soil health in crops and pastures. David has decades of experience in soil testing, interpretation and analysis, and is keen to share his knowledge on the importance of soil testing for improved management of agricultural systems. Our second round of testing will be conducted in the North Burnett by Kendall Muller. Kendall is also an independent agronomist with almost 20 years experience as a crop agronomist in the Burnett. The initial feedback we've received has been overwhelmingly positive. One Lucerne farmer said that his family have felt that in the past that they may have been conned, and they were extremely grateful for advice from someone who is independent and not trying to push a product or sale. Another beef, cattle and fodder crop producer said it was the first time that they felt that they have really understood a soil test. This really cemented to me why this project is important. Offering independent support on a one-on-one level is a great step towards making soil testing part of best practice for producers. The extension events, where we have two actually on this week, will allow these producers to come together and discuss their experiences along with other producers, while David shares how to interpret soil test results at a producer level, discusses the results from the local soil testing round at an aggregated level, and outlines the implications for management and nutrition requirements for improved pastoral crop production and soil health. So what do we want to achieve with our extension activities as part of this project? I guess through demonstrating the tangible benefits of soil testing, the project will foster the desire within the cropping and grazing community to implement a soil testing regime that is relevant and appropriate for their production system. The project will support motivated landholders to conduct soil testing and use it to inform management decisions. The project seeks to embed soil testing into routine management practices to support improved productivity and soil resource condition. And I guess why we think this is important and worthwhile is while the importance of soil and health and soil health as the foundation for production systems is well documented and acknowledged, land managers may be unsure how to best manage this resource for productivity and maintained or improved condition. In the Burnett, this is compounded by extreme climate and weather events, significant drought over the last 3 years and now this year, flooding again, both of which have the potential to severely compromise soil health. The proposed extension activities and ongoing support will create a better understanding of soil and the need to monitor its health over time as a means to better manage it now and into the future. So if anyone has any further questions or needs more information, just don't hesitate to contact Katie Muller on these details. Thank you.
All right. Well, a bit hard to thank Katie because she's not here, but if anyone got any questions, put them in the chat and we'll forward them on to Katie. I think it's quite interesting the vast array of different situations they're covering in that project, and probably something that's covered important for pretty much all regions is the extreme weather events we're facing, whether that be the flooding extremes or the drought extremes and the swings between them. So being able to manage for that is going to become increasingly important into the future. So our next presentation is from Yash Dang from the University of Queensland. So Yash's presentation is on the project called Targeted Soil Testing to Enhance Farmer Capacity for Improving Soil Health and Sustainability.
We cannot manage. If we recall, in good old days, we used to go to a paddock and make X number of holes and make a composite sample, and we end up with a composite result. So this particular project is targeted at how we can, where we should go and sample the paddock. To achieve this objective, in the past, with the previous project, we have developed a constraint ID tool, which I will come in a minute. But before I do that, I would like to discuss some of the ways we can measure this variability. In my opinion, growers' knowledge and the experience is the most important aspect of identifying this variability, because farmer knows that farmer knows his paddock, because he has been working on that paddock for the last number of years, and he knows which areas are underperforming and which are doing good for him. The second important point is that doing the point soil sampling, but it is a very expensive exercise. How many holes we should go and make in a paddock of around, say, 100 hectares? So that's a very expensive exercise. I believe that yield monitoring is the most important piece of information if we can have. But not many growers, they have got the yield mapping facilities. But many growers, they do rely on the proximal soil mapping using electromagnetic induction surveys. And many companies, they are doing that one. But in this project, what we are using is remote sensing. Our hypothesis is that if we are getting a consistent pattern of the crop growth year after year in a particular area of a paddock, that means that has got some kind of a soil constraint. Other constraints like nutrient deficiencies, toxicities, in-crop rainfall, weeds, you might see those in 1 year, and in another year, you may not see those ones. With our previous GRDC project, we have developed a tool called Constraint ID. It has got a very simple 6 steps. You can access your own paddock and get the results of your paddock yourself. What this does, this Constraint ID uses the multi-year of remote sensing data, and each image within a year is a composite of all the images within that year. And we look at peak biomass, and we take all the images plus minus 32 days from that peak. And ultimately, this provides the 3 management zones, that is low, high yielding zone, low yielding zone, and the intermediate one. And it automatically suggests you a number of optimal soil sampling. But you can always override this. At the moment, by default, you get 12 locations. However, you can change those depending on the resources. And this will give you the lats and long of the sites where you should go and sample. And then you can composite these samples in the bad area separately from the high yielding zone. So I think in the last 1.5 years, we have seen a major growth in the user for this Constraint ID. Already we have got around 250 users in a small area of northern region. At the moment, this tool is only applicable in the northern region, that is Queensland and New South Wales. So in this project, what objective we have? Our aim is to improve the farmer's uptake of soil sampling by demonstrating how this Constraint ID can be used to identify the targeted soil sampling points. And finally, once we have got these soil tests done, then what these numbers means to them and how they can formulate a management plan to improve the productivity and farm profitability. So what we have done in this one, we have divided the whole of this northern region into 6 farming groups, and that is 3 in Queensland and 3 in New South Wales. That is Darling Downs, Western Downs, and Central Queensland in Queensland, and Central, Northern, and Southern New South Wales in New South Wales. In each of these regions, we will be conducting action learning workshops to demonstrate how this Constraint ID can be used and how this will allow the farmers to test the paddock to identify this variability and detect the crop variability and select the site for the sampling. And then we will conduct the soil sampling and get the analysis done by an accredited lab. In the second action learning workshop, we will discuss these soil test results with the farmer and select to select the appropriate management response to these constraints. So we will be also conducting field days in each region to promote the soil testing and analysis and using on-farm simple tests to assess the soil conditions as well. We will be documenting all of these locally relevant case studies, educational material in the form of fact sheet, YouTubes, and videos on this Constraint ID website, which is www.constraintid.com.au. And that will be a legacy extension material. So where we are at the moment, work has already begun on identifying the farmers group and conducting the first action learning workshop. And there had been a huge interest among the growers in attending these workshops. At the moment, we are targeting around 15 to 20 farmers in each of these workshops, because we are doing almost one-to-one this training for all the farmers attending this workshop. And soil sampling is underway. We have also developed surveys to use before and after the delivery of the workshops to assess the farmers' learning and the program impact. Future activities, we will be doing the soil sampling will be completed before we start the second round of action learning workshops. We will be conducting the field days, and we will be developing the legacy education material, and we will be also assessing the farmer learning and program impact. And looking at a number of questions Jan got, I might add that we will be doing the soil sampling in the 5 depth intervals. 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 60, and then lower depth. And we will be analyzing the soils for each depth separately for physical, chemical, and biological properties. Most of them will be physical and chemical properties. In biological properties, we will be doing organic carbon. Thanks. Any question, please?
Yes, there's a couple in the chat. So is constraint ID mapping available across the whole region?
It is available in the grains cropping regions of Queensland and New South Wales at the moment.
Okay. What advice to provide farmers in terms of fertilizer management plan for a land having a significant variability?
Well, this particular constraint ID is not designed to provide advice on the nutrients. It is mainly on the salinity, sodicity, acidity, and compaction, mainly the soil constraints.
No worries. And where does all the data go? Is it going into the National Register?
As Jan mentioned, that we have got a consent from all the farmers to share this data with the National Archives. My understanding is that this data will be going into the ASRIS, that is Australian Soils Landscape, that is run by CSIRO. That's my understanding, that's where this data will be going. But we are committed to share this data with the National Archive, whichever that would be discussed at a later stage by the Commonwealth, with the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Yash. Just a quick question. You talk about the simple on-farm soil tests that farmers are being taught about or instructed on. What sort of tests do they involve?
In this particular, we will be doing physical and chemical, mainly physical and chemical properties. We will be looking at pH, ECs, chloride concentration, dispersion, and as well test, organic carbon. We will be doing the testing for the nutrients as well, but we are not providing a lot of advice into the nutrients for this in this project. But we will be doing the analysis for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, zinc, all these nutrients as well. But we will be providing generic help on these nutrients.
No worries. All right. Thanks, Yash. We've also had another question come up. So it's asking, is the work you're doing complementing what DAF's doing in the Queensland side of the border?
Some of the things they are complementary to the QDAF project, and definitely we will be collating all the data together. We had a quick chat with Jane Gentry. She is the lead of QDAF project, and if there is a possibility that wherever possible, we will try to collaborate on this project. With both the projects will be collaborating.
Great. No worries. Thanks very much, Yash. Another great project. We're going to move on to a presentation from Jenny Coldham, who comes from Glenrack, which is a not-for-profit natural resource management group based in Glen Innes. And her project is called Making Sense of Soils, Building Farmer Knowledge and Increasing Adoption. Unfortunately, Jenny can't make it today, so we're going to play a presentation.
Hi, I'm Jenny Coldham.
Can we hear?
Soils Extension Officer for Glenrack. The Glenrack region is on the northern tablelands of New South Wales. It's the Glen Innes 7 local government area and surrounding districts that consider Glen Innes to be their community of interest. Agriculture is the biggest industry in our area, primarily extensive beef cattle and sheep grazing. There is some cropping, but it's mostly fodder crops. The climate is cool temperate with summer dominant rainfall. The average annual rainfall is around 840 mils. What is Glenrack? Glenrack is a not-for-profit community organisation with a membership of more than 1,400 people, the majority of whom are rural landholders. Our core business is delivering on-ground projects and education and capacity building programs. The scope of our activity has broadened following the string of natural disasters in our area: drought, fires and floods. In the last financial year, we delivered 96 events to nearly 2,400 participants. Our projects brought in more than $1.4 million worth of funding to the area from a wide range of sources, and we work with a broad range of partner organisations. Glenrack have identified the importance of soils in the current strategic plan and have prioritised actions to work on healthy soils for healthy landscapes and sustainable management of our land. Our Soils Extension project is working to achieve these objectives. Making sense of soils, building farmer knowledge and increasing adoption for Glen Innes, New South Wales. The aim of our project is to increase knowledge and capacity of farmers in the Glen Innes district to adopt and implement improved soil management practices. The activities in the project will engage approximately 130 farmers in learning about soils, undertaking soil testing and understanding soil test results. It will also contribute data to our local knowledge of soils and also to the National Soils Database. This project will build on the results of previous programs. There are three components of our Making Sense of Soils project, and these components are supported by the Soils Extension Officer role. We've got digging deeper workshops, soil test interpretation sessions, and soils-focused farm walks. The digging deeper workshops aim to build skills and knowledge around soil type, soil health, and soil fertility. We'll see 3 groups of around 8 to 10 properties participate in a series of 3 workshops spread over several months. These participants will also receive soil tests for nutrients relevant to grazing enterprises like pH, phosphorus, sulphur, organic carbon and exchangeable cations. Participants will also be introduced to the Decipher Ag app for submitting samples, storing soil test results in the cloud and farm mapping. The soil test interpretation sessions will be local small groups focused on making sense of soil tests. There will be 6 half-day sessions for groups of around 8 properties spread all across the Glenrack district. Again, these participants will take soil samples and send them off for testing for nutrients relevant to their grazing enterprises, and then come back together and look at the results. And then we'll be running a series of farm walks looking at soil type, soil health and soil fertility in the field, building on those digging deeper and soil test interpretation sessions. There'll be 6 farm walks across the district, and we'll be looking at comparing management practices and the impacts on soil. As well as these 3 key activities, the Soils Extension Officer will work to link our producers into networks like this one today and assist engaging with opportunities like the Historical Soils Data Capture Program. But as well as this Making Sense of Soils project, Glenrack are also delivering another project focused on soil health and soil biology. It's called Soils Alive. This project will see 2 groups of around 20 producers increase their understanding about soil biology and its role in soil health through participating in a series of 4 workshops. These workshops will unpack the different players in soil biology, what they do, and how they work together. Participants will learn some field assessment techniques, bring in some samples and have a look under a microscope, and send off samples for DNA testing. We will be taking these samples for baseline testing at the start of the program, with follow-up samples taken 12 months later to see if there are any changes and look at what might have influenced that, seasonal conditions, management, etc. These workshops will be delivered by Dave Hardwick and Christy Yeoman from Soil Land Food, and will be using the MetaGen lab for the DNA soil biology testing. Participants will learn what these results mean, helped by the useful colour coding and benchmarks, but also how management of our soils can impact and influence soil biology. The first workshop is getting underway in mid-September, and there's really good interest in participating. Making Sense of Soils and Soils Alive both build on our Soils in the Spotlight project, which we completed recently. This project ran between 2019 and 2022. It saw 4 groups of landholders participating in the Digging Deeper series of workshops. They built field assessment skills and soil test interpretation understanding. We had soil samples taken from 79 sites across 41 properties, and these samples were tested for more than 20 different soil parameters, and participants were introduced to the Decipher Ag app for storing their soil test results in the cloud and doing some basic farm mapping. The feedback on the Digging Deeper workshops was really positive, and the evaluations indicated improvements in both knowledge and confidence in soils and monitoring soils. As part of the project, we also conducted a survey looking at monitoring soils, adoption of soil testing, and using soil test results for decision making. We saw some really interesting results around the use of soil tests and what people thought that they used the results for. The project also compiled a summary report of key soil properties from soil test data Glenrack had from previous projects. We collated the results from 358 soil samples and summarised that data across 6 districts. This information was compiled into a report which is available from the Glenrack website. Benchmarks for each soil property were provided, and a visual display of the results were provided for each district. This one shows soil organic carbon across our district. This map shows exchangeable aluminium percentages across the district. And this one demonstrates soil fertility in a phosphorus coal wool measure, giving a quick view as to the difference between our districts. The project culminated in the Soils in the Spotlight event, which launched the Soil Summary Report, looked at some long-term soil carbon monitoring at a project site near Glen Innes, and saw our Regional Soils Coordinator, Cameron Leckie, get asked 101 questions about the National Soils Program. This event also introduced our new soils projects, Soils Alive and Making Sense of Soils. Plenty of action and interest in soils in the Glen Innes area. Thank you.
The next presentation will be Chris Arwood, who's the Senior Agronomist with Norco. And the project Chris has is increasing the uptake of electromagnetic mapping along the East Coast. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Okay, hi team. Just getting this up. All right, hopefully you can see that.
Yep.
Look, our project is essentially just about increasing the utilisation of spatial agronomy with regards to inputs that landholders use. We've committed to setting up 15 sites running down the coast in the area that we work, which is pretty well Bundaberg down to Kempsey, west out to Toowoomba, Glen Innes, Tenterfield and Armidale. There'll be more than 15, but that's what the commitment was. At those 15 sites, we are using, as you can see on the screen there, and this presentation wasn't designed for this, so I'll just skip through some slides, but that's the soil mapper we'll be using. So it's an EM mapper, was referred to by a few other projects today. That shoots down to 1.1 metres. We get 4 maps out of that, 500 mil map, 700 mil map, 900 mil map, and 1100 mil map. Mostly working on the higher levels for agronomy inputs, but looking at the lower levels for subsoil constraints to productivity. But I did see some questions on what is an EM mapper. Look, it reads, it's a sensor, reads the, I should point out, when you got an EM mapper like that sensor on the front there, that's 1.1 metres long. So it shoots 1.1 metres deep. You get 3 metre ones, all sorts of stuff. But runs around, collects data. That's an image there of just the data it collects, and then that gets turned into spatial maps, as you can see there. And they're provided at various depths. But look, I guess the key point of our project is that we seek to increase adoption on looking from a farmer's perspective. We want to change the focus from the paddock, like for example, paddock 1 or back paddock or house paddock or block 1, whatever people might call it. That's the management unit that inputs that are used to determine inputs. So the whole paddock gets a certain input. We want to change that to using these spatial definitions that hopefully you can see on the screen, different soil zones identified with EM mapping. They're the units of measurement that we want to use for our inputs. And the reason we want to do that is because that offers cost savings to the grower, it offers productivity benefits to the grower, and environmental outcomes where we're using less inputs. So so we run the mapper around. That hasn't started because of the wet, as other presenters have commented on, but the mapper's coming through to do all these sites first week of September. We'll have some field days around the mapping as it goes on. Maps, so the rig will collect the data. We'll then get back the maps. The participants in the project are then committed to host further field days and apply some input in a variable rate fashion. So instead of a blanket application of phosphorus or lime or nitrogen, depending on what we find in the maps, the requirement is that they will apply some of those inputs in a variable rate fashion. That variable rate application will be based off the maps that you can, as an example, you can see there, anyone that's not aware, they get turned into, if I've got an example here, hopefully I do, they get turned into, this is a different one here. This is not a great example, but that image here, that's a shapefile, right? So we convert the map, that's a satellite image, not a soil map, but same concept, convert the map into a shapefile, feed that into the variable rate spreader and apply our inputs on a variable rate fashion. So yeah, the participant, here's one here. This is more like what we'll do. This is a typical example of a macadamia orchard in Alstonville. 3 different rates of input there, as you can see. Well, you may not be able to see, but the different colours represent different rates, ranging from 0 to none. And we are now, so basically the whole core of the project is just to demonstrate to growers along the East Coast here that this technology is readily available. It's not more expensive to use it. They do have cost savings as a result. They do get productivity benefits as a result, and there's environmental and social benefits that's been offered as well. So the demo sites are just about making people aware that this service is available. We have less than 1% utilisation of variable rate inputs in the footprint I work in, but all the contract spreaders that work through the area, well, 90% of the contract spreaders that work through the area have the capacity to utilise it. But their options just not been taken up because the growers don't have spatial data on which to create shapefiles that the variable rate spreaders require. So yeah, so we map the soil. That's happening next week. We held field days explaining what it's about. We're depending on what we find in the maps. Obviously, there's GPS reference soil sampling around these zones, so we understand what these maps are showing us. Based on those soil test results, we then create nutrient input plans, which are then applied in a variable rate fashion via a shapefile like you see on your screen here. We then do follow-up soil testing in year 2 to confirm that our variable rate inputs have in fact delivered the agronomic outcomes that the grower was looking for, and present that information widely. And I think that largely covers what we're about. So I'll probably pull up there.
I have a few questions for you if you're
Sure.
willing to answer.
Yeah. Yep.
So how many farmers have the equipment to do the variable rate application?
Yeah, good question. So very few farmers have variable rate drive on their personal gear, but the markets we work in, being coastal, largely big portion of them serviced by contract spreaders, and some 80% of those contract spreaders have the capacity to do it. And depending on what we find on the maps, whilst the examples I showed you were fairly busy maps, we do find more basic maps. And what we do with those is we can just mark out in the paddock by dropping bags of dirt or witches' hats, whatever, to highlight zones and give the grower instructions on application rate. So it can sort of manualise the process for variable rate input if they don't have or don't want to use a contract spreader.
Alrighty. So a bit of lingo here. Let's see how well I go. How are you going from ECA measured by EMI to pH map? EMI doesn't measure pH. Yeah,
correct. So the EM map just gives us soil zones, and that's all it does. So we're just using those as spatial boundaries of similar soil types. What needs to be applied to or not applied to those soil zones is determined by soil testing. So typical lab testing, we use the EAL at Lismore and full suite of tests, and handheld pH meter, because that's one of the more common things. So we do a few extra tests with handheld pH. But so the EC meter, or so the EM map tells us nothing about what's required. It just gives us spatial definition on the zones that we will investigate further and then use.
Okay. So then I think, Jenny, maybe that might answer your question, but the follow-up question is, what is the cost per hectare to survey a map?
Our commercial cost is $60 per hectare, GST included, and that's a one-off cost unless there's major earthworks. That mapping is never done again, and the maps are used over and over again. And on bigger broadacre areas, this service, I understand where we don't work, we're on coastal intensive places, but in the broadacre areas, this service comes down to cost of $25 a hectare. They don't do it as intensely, like bigger gaps between the swaths, but so 60 to 25, depending on what market you're in and how intense a survey you're looking for. I will just add to that, in 90% of the cases we've done thus far, the $60 per hectare is recouped in the very first time they use it for variable rate lime application. If you work on say $100 a tonne landed lime, it's very easy to recoup that saving the very first time we use it, let alone the second, third, fourth, fifth.
Wonderful.
Great, thanks, Chris. Very exciting to see this sort of stuff being applied. Just wondering, do you use any other layers other than the EM data for the zoning, or is it just the EM data?
Yes, we do, and that's an evolving space, Cameron, but we use NDVI satellite imagery. We hope to have yield data, but we don't have a lot of that at the moment, but there's a few parts of our market that have yield data. I did mention to you some nitrogen sensing stuff, but largely at the moment, all we're using is soil mapping, as I've displayed, NDVI, and shortly yield mapping.
All right, great. All right, thanks a lot, Chris. Looks like a great project. All right, so we move on to our last presentation for the day, which is from Gemma Turnbull. Gemma's the team leader for Western Local Land Services. She's based in Burke, and her project is Rangelands Network for Soil Knowledge. Unfortunately, Gemma can't be here today, so we're going to have a pre-recorded presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Gemma Turnbull. I'm the team leader for agriculture with Western Local Land Services, and I'm based in the Burke office. I've been asked today to give you a bit of an overview of one of our projects, the Rangelands Network for Soil Knowledge. So some of the things I'll cover today when discussing the project is just a bit of a background, the objectives of the project, methodology, some of our planned activities that we've got coming up in the next little while, and some of the project speed humps that we've been dealing with. So some background on the project. So Western Local Land Services are the lead agency on this project, but with one of our major partners being the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries. It was a joint effort putting the application in and developing the project. We worked together on the application. And the thoughts behind the project were that we wanted to target some landholders that had been engaged as observers in some other rangelands research projects. One particularly being the Rangelands Living Skin project, which has been funded by Meat and Livestock Australia. So it's a New South Wales DPI project, and Western Local Land Services are project partners on that project as well. So the landholders that are involved as observers in that project, between them have over 30 properties, and they manage approximately 500,000 hectares throughout Western New South Wales. And these landholders that are involved in that project had already expressed an interest in soil monitoring and changes in management for improved soil health. So in terms of objectives for the project, the main objectives were to overcome the barriers to adoption of soil testing in the rangelands of Western New South Wales, as well as supporting landholders to achieve land management goals. And such goals as increasing soil carbon, infiltration, ground cover, and improving soil function. Obviously with the end result being reducing wind and water erosion. Project methodology, so we've got 3 phases. So phase 1 was to develop rangeland specific soil sampling protocols for landholders. So in the rangelands, traditional soil sampling methods aren't suitable. They're not directly applicable, they're uneconomical. So it was identified that we'd have to develop practical and meaningful protocols for landholders to be able to baseline their soil health. We wanted it to be consistent with national soil database requirements, and we wanted to increase the number of landholders who were sampling and contributing to the database. So there's quite a lack of existing thresholds and benchmarks for rangeland soils, and not a great understanding of soil types and the value of soil health and management strategies to improve soil health in Western New South Wales. So phase 2 of the project is to deliver training and resources. So delivery of field days and capacity building activities, focusing on the collection of samples, how to interpret the results, and looking at some of the strategies that could be used on farm to improve soil health. And as well as the capacity building, we wanted some resources that are going to have some longevity beyond the life of the project. So looking at developing short videos and some written resources. So some of the things that will be covered, including soil sampling, like how to take soil samples, how to identify different soil types, and some examples of innovative soil management that other landholders might be undertaking. Phase 3 of the project is to establish a landholder network of paired sites. So these paired sites will be established on farm to demonstrate the benefits of improved soil management, and those sites will be established using learnings from phase 1 and 2. And it's hoped that these paired sites will also help create a legacy of soil monitoring and knowledge sharing through the landholder network well beyond the life of this project. So we're hoping that landholders will be able to put into practice some of the learnings on the value of soil data to achieve soil health and production outcomes. And we want to really utilise a paddock learning model to raise that awareness of the importance of soil testing and using it to support decision making. So some of the planned activities that we have coming up in the next little while. So in a few weeks, we've got a cropping field day that's scheduled for early September. So it's going to be held in the Balranald, Euston area. And we're going to be looking at also preparing some of the soil sampling guides, the videos and information sheets. So we'll probably be doing some filming as part of that cropping workshop. In terms of speed humps, it hasn't been without its issues. So we've had some movement of some key staff members, both on the Western LLS side and the New South Wales DPI side. And while you do manage, for these type of issues, and as we all do when we put project proposals in and activity plans, we do undertake risk assessments, and movement of staff is often covered. But I think what we weren't prepared for were 2 key staff members leaving within a 2-month period. So that caused a fairly significant disruption to the project team and a fair bit of catching up. But yeah, fortunately, we've been lucky that we've still got contact with one of the staff members that was involved in the development of the project that's since left. So starting to come out the other side there now. Thank you.
So some great presentations, some great projects there. I guess some common themes. First of all, at the heart of them, soil testing is common across all the projects. I guess the basis for that is the better knowledge that producers have and the better decision making they can make as far as how they manage their land. And it's good to see what Chris mentioned, how that investment in the soil testing can actually be recouped in a short time. So obviously, when that becomes obvious, hopefully it'll get a great uptake. And it's also good to see the longevity, so the projects are only short term, but I think all the projects are looking at leaving a legacy which will progress obviously past the end of the project date. I just want to comment on Gemma's presentation. So she mentioned uneconomical for traditional soil sampling in the rangelands just because of the vast landscapes. There is a project being run by the Food Agility CRC which seeks to, for the soil carbon projects under the ERF, the Emissions Reduction Fund, which seeks to minimise the requirement for physical soil sampling through increased use of remotely sensed data. All right, so we're running a little bit behind time, so I'll go through this pretty quickly, but just an update on the National Soil Strategy. So it was released in mid-2021. Hopefully most of you are aware of that. The draft action plan should be soon to be released to the public. So I believe that the steering committee this week is seeing the draft action plan, and then it'll be available to the public in a relatively short period of time after that. So I'd encourage anyone who's interested to obviously have a read, and if you feel that you can add some value, to make comments on that. Right, the Pilot Soil Monitoring Incentives Program. So this was one of the major programs announced by the National Soil Strategy when it was released. Is now up and running, has been for several months. Unfortunately for Southern Cross University, they've had to actually build the program at the same time as it's running, so it's taken a little bit of time to get going. But as of last week, they had 49 registered service providers, with another about 200 going through the process of registering, and 2,000 participants who've indicated interest in participating in the program. So I believe the first soil samples from this program will be collected this week. And now that some of the teething issues have been sorted out, we should see a rapid uptake. So Kate, could you just add if you haven't already done so, the link to that in the chat. So if you're not aware of the program, it gives up to $10,000 subsidy for soil testing. So it's not free soil testing, but it is a subsidy, and it can be used for 2 purposes. Basically, to get some basic soil properties at 3 depths, down to 30 centimetres, things such as organic carbon, soil texture, bulk density, pH, EC, and a couple of nutrients. Or it can also be used for subsidising the soil sampling required for someone who's going to participate in a soil carbon project under the Emissions Reductions Fund. So sort of 2 avenues there, how that can be used. I've given a number of presentations on this program in recent months. So if you or your organisation wants more information or wants to have a presentation on it, please get hold of me and we can organise that for some future date. The other program which was announced as part of the National Soil Strategy is the Historical Soil Data Capture Payments Program. So landholders or people who own soil data can receive a payment of up to $50 to $200 per soil sample that they provide. How much money you get is basically dependent on how many soil properties are in a soil test. So if you get lots of soil properties, 16 or more, you get $200. If it's only a handful, you get about $50. So it's for soil data collected prior to the 1st of January this year from an accredited laboratory. The program ends 30th of June next year, and it's accessed through 4 data brokers. So Kate will put the link to the website in the chat, and the details of the brokers there can be found on that website. And the last program we'll talk about is the Recognised Soil Practitioner. So this is a new accreditation program for soil professionals. It will be recognised by government and industry. So if you go through all the documentation for the Smart Farm Small Grants soil extension activities and the pilot soil monitoring program, it says that soil extension activities need to be completed by a suitably qualified person, but it doesn't actually specify what that is. In the future, you can expect that suitably qualified person will be a recognised soil practitioner. The program is being run by or managed by Soil Science Australia, and it will be awarded based on industry experience, training, and also be a recognition of prior learning pathway, with a target audience being agronomists, consultants, and extension officers. So there's actually a sort of pilot training for this occurring at the moment, with the aim that early next year will be ready to roll out to a broader audience. So if anyone in the audience is interested in registering to get that accreditation as a recognised soil practitioner, if you could put your, if you email the training manager, Felicity Harrop at Soil Science Australia, and Kate will put the email address in the chat presently. Okay, so we're coming to the end now. So we've got another similar forum planned for the 26th of October. This forum here concentrated on the Smart Farm Small Grant Soil Extension Activity Program. There's another program running called the Drought Resilient Soils and Landscapes Grants. Different funding line, but at the heart, they're very similar. Many of the projects are very similar, looking at how to improve soil health as part of drought resilience. So we'll have the 6 project managers for these drought resilient soil and landscape projects will be the primary focus of that next webinar. And if you want to register for it, you can click on the link, and I believe Kate will share that as well into the chat. And follow-up email will also come out with details of that. All right, so just like to say thank you to everyone who attended. I hope you got some value out of it. Special thanks to the people who presented, all the project managers for the Smart Farms projects. Greatly appreciated, and good luck with your projects.